Hi, folks. This is Don Meisner with the North Country Fishing Report. You know, I'm going to tell you about something that I normally would only be telling the people in the radio station down in Jefferson County, but I think this is important. I called my buddy this morning, Rocky, who guides on the Salmon River. And I said, Rocky, a week ago you told me the river was unfishable, but you had something to tell me this week. So I'm calling to find out what it was you wanted to share with me. And I think this is really important for all of us to think about. Number one, he said, the one thing I can tell you, the river is fishable now. It's high, but it's fishable. And of course, we're talking about steelhead that come up there to eat the salmon eggs. But he said, the thing I want you to stress to everyone is safety. Safety is everything. He said, now when I'm guiding people, I insist that they've got to have cleats on the bottom of their feet because it's so treacherous. The bottom is so slippery, and you fall this time of the year and it can be deadly. The second thing, I want them to have a staff, a waiting staff, so that they can counteract any discrepancy in balance so they can stay afloat. And he says, truthfully now, I don't allow any of my people that I'm taking fishing to get in water any deeper than between their ankles and their knees. He says it's just going to be much safer that way. And he says, I've noticed that you can put people in a position and they tend to creep. And what he means is that they sort of shift a bit and get a little deeper. He says, I have to warn against these things, that this is so critical. And he said, here's the other thing that people have to understand. People always want to go back to a point that they remember catching a fish, some spot that was that magic spot where they were able to catch a steelhead. But what they don't realize is the spots change depending on the flow of water. And if the water is flowing at 5 times the flow rate of when it was they were there before, then the fish aren't going to be in those spots anyway. The higher the water becomes, he says, the fewer holding spots there are in the river for the steelhead to stop and to sort of hold in. And this is part of the case of fishing fast water. And that's what happens when the water level comes up. The other thing that he mentioned that I found fascinating, because I don't think I ever really thought about it this way. He said, fishing this time of the year, especially as the water flows a little faster, that the steelhead will tend to orient closer to shore. And I think this is a great tip. But why? Why are they closer to shore? And he said it's because there's a certain amount of friction, or you can term it in whatever you want to weigh, along the shoreline that gives it a bit more restful, the water, for those fish to hold in, to stay in, because it's sort of next to the shore, that the water is pushed back out from the friction of the shoreline, so that it's slower. It's a bit slower there in that area, and these fish will hold there. This just absolutely amazed me. The other thing that he did mention to me that I find fascinating, because I've done shows with Rocky, and we did a couple TV shows up at Redfield Reservoir. And this is something totally different. We're not talking about salmon, steelhead, and all that right now. But this is an area that I just truly loved. It wasn't because the fishing was fantastic there, but just the surroundings were so wonderful. And you can Google this. You can find where this is. But here's the thing. He said it wasn't until about 10 years ago that they started putting walleyes in here. They started stocking walleyes. And for years and years, it was really hard to catch a keeper-sized walleye that would be 18 inches long. He said now, however, the years have passed, a lot of these fish have survived, and he said now people are catching walleyes 25, even 28 inches long in here. Something that some of you might want to just keep in mind, because we all love to catch walleyes. We all love to fish for walleyes. And to have an inland body of water that you can catch these fish in gives you just a further opportunity. It's a little bit different. you don't have the migration routes that you have in some of the bigger waters. And in many cases, it's easier to find these fish. Anyway, I thought you would all be interested in what Rocky had told me about fishing winter waters. There's so many safety factors involved, and his tips are just straight on. He's a great guide. He's been a great friend to me, and thankfully, he passes on a lot of this information so I can share it with you. Until next time, folks, this is Don Meisner with the North Country Fishing Report.